Stand for the playing of our national anthem.
Good evening. What a joy it is for us to showcase Oliver on this end of the county. We're bursting at the seams, as you can see, and that's a good thing because this is the fastest growing area in Nashville. And so at this time, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of some elected officials. My colleague, Ms. Thais Hunter, Ms. Kathy Buggs from Congressman Cooper's office. And have I omitted anyone? Well, we are excited also to let you know that wonderful things are happening in the Overton cluster. We have new staff members, new principals at Shane, here at Oliver, at Croft, and at Creve Hall. Are any of those principals present tonight? All right. Welcome. Welcome. Ms. Wilson and Mr. Mott. We also have renovations that are going on in the area. We have renovations that are at Norman Binkley, which is in the cluster, at Creve Hall, at McMurray, and Overton. Long overdue. So we're excited about that. Welcome, Dr. Joseph. Welcome, Dr. Joseph. We're excited about all the wonderful things that you have been doing since you've arrived.
Thank you. Now I can make a joke, but I pull myself together.
I also have some announcements and housekeeping items to take care of because we want to hear from Dr. Joseph. Once again, we want to thank the Oliver Wynn Ensemble and their directors. And we have translation services that will be available to anyone who might need them. There's a table in the lobby with translation headsets, and I'm going to ask our translators tonight to repeat that information to make sure that everyone is aware.
Buenas tardes a todos. Si necesitan los servicios de un intérprete de español, en la parte de atrás hay audífonos y dispositivos y con gusto le ayudamos. Muchas gracias.
ایواری باش بو زمان کردی جی اگر و ببید سماعل هاوه هن دیخنا سرگویت خود دی بو ورگرین زور سپاس.
السلام عليكم. أنا عبد الستار ركاني مترجم اللغة العربية. إن كنت تحتاج إلى خدمات الترجمة قابلني في الخارج لغرض تزويدكم بالأجهزة.
शुभ संध्या मेरा नाम दीपक गुरुङ है म नेपाली ट्रान्सलेटर एन्ड इन्टरप्रेटर हुँ। यदि तपाईँलाई अङ्ग्रेजी बुझ्नुहुन्न र केही मद्दत चाहिन्छ भने पछाडि आउनुहोस् र म मद्दत गर्न तयार हुनेछु। धन्यवाद।
galab wanaagsan magacaygu waa cabdiqani maxamuud waxaan diyaar u ahay inaan idinka caawiyo wixii afcaliyiin oo ku saabsan inta hawsha lagu guda jiro bannaanka waxaa idinku diyaara qalabkii loogu adeegsan lahaa afcaliyaasha marka haddaad diyaar u tihiin qof walbaa wuxuu ka heli karaa bannaanka
မင်္ဂလာညနေခင်းပါကျွန်မနာမည်ခွန်လဖိုင်လို့ခေါ်ပါတယ်အခုဒီညနေခင်းအတွက်မြန်မာစကားပြန်လိုအပ်တဲ့ဆိုရင်အပြင်မှာကျွန်မတို့ headset တွေရှိပါတယ်အဲ့ဒါအပြင်မှာထွက်ပြီးတော့မှလာယူလို့ရပါတယ်ကျေးဇူးတင်ပါတယ်
Thank you. And before I go any further, I'd like to also introduce any other principals who are in our Overton cluster. Would you please stand? Thank you. Next, I've been asked to go over the format for tonight's meeting and how things will work. This is called a listen and learn because Dr. Joseph and I are here to listen to you and learn from what you have to share. We have 2 staff members with microphones, one on each aisle. Please wave so that everyone will be able to see you. The Q&A will end at 7:30 tonight, but the gallery walk will open until 8 p.m. So we want you to raise your hand, and one of the persons will come to you with the mic, and they will hold the mic so that you... So please don't come into the aisle. They will come to you. We greatly appreciate you taking time tonight to be with us, and we want to hear your ideas and concerns and hopes and dreams for our schools and the incredible work that will be done just in the future. It's already begun. So now it's my pleasure to turn it over to Dr. Sean Joseph to kick off tonight's Q&A.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I can't tell you how excited I am to be here tonight. There is such a strong sense of leadership within this cluster. I believe this summer we hired maybe 3 or 4 different assistant principals from this cluster to go off and be principals in different places, which speaks to the strength of leadership that's in this region. And it really begins with our board leadership. I mean, Dr. Brandon has been a board member for a long time in this cluster, serving you all, and she was a principal in this district. And, you know, all leadership is based upon context. And, you know, I can come in with some crazy ideas if I don't have the context. You know, and Dr. Brandon keeps me straight, right from the beginning in terms of, because she really knows the needs of this cluster and this school district, both serving as a principal within this district with distinction and now as a board member. So can we give her a round of applause for her years of leadership and excellence? I'm also excited to be here because I was a middle school principal before, so I know you gotta be a little crazy to come to a middle school. Like y'all been crazy before. You've been middle school people. It's the nature of the beast. But there's something special about what happens in middle school and in those 4 years. I mean that the years of growth, both not only they grow from children to strong adolescents, but academically. There's a lot of things that happen in middle school, and we've got to get that right. I mean, one of the things that I've heard in the other 10 listen and learn sessions is, what about middle school? What are we doing in this district to make sure that when our families leave elementary that they have strong middle school options, because that's the time where we lose children. Is that middle school? I mean, you show me if a student is strong in middle school, the likelihood of them getting through high school is high. Those same students that struggle in middle school go into a high school, and it's a challenge. So we recognize we have to do something at this level, and so I'm excited to be here at Oliver to talk to you about what it is we can do as a community, to really make the Metro Nashville Public Schools some of the best schools in the country. I mean, without question, that is our goal. And this summer we spent, like I said, we have 31 new principals in the Metro Public School District this year. I mean, that's significant. But we feel like we've got the right leadership and feel proud to have hired your new principal here at Oliver Middle School. Where are you once again? Ready to go? Dr. Schaefer, can you stand? Where are you? See, he's out running, working hard. See, that's what we want. He's about the business. But I can tell you specifically, what impressed me most about Dr. Schaefer was his passion for this particular school. A lot of times when you interview people, people just want a job. Dr. Schaefer wanted to be here. He was in this cluster. He knew everything about this school, and the passion that he exuded was commendable. And when I saw him, he had a big smile on his face, even though we just hired him like a week ago. He's here ready. He's ready to go because in 3 days school begins, and we are ready because we have an extraordinary team that we've assembled to do this work. It's not about what an individual does. An individual can do nothing, to change a trajectory. It really takes a team and it takes a community to be a part of that team. And I am, very proud to have on my team, I think pound for pound, some of the strongest leaders in the country. I mean, starting with Dr. Monique Felder. She's come to us from Prince George's County, where she was my right and left hand in the Office of Teaching and Learning there. But prior to that, she had been in Montgomery County Public Schools, Maryland, and she was the Director of Accelerated and Enriched Instruction. Because one of the things we have to think about in this district is how do we ensure that there's rigorous opportunities provided for all children, not just some children, not just in some classes, but in all classes, all buildings. How do we make that just the standard operating procedure? Because children rise to the level of expectation that's set for them. But if we don't give them an invitation, access, and opportunity to engage in rigorous curriculum, then they'll never meet high expectations. And Dr. Felder understands that. She's actually written extensively on it. She has a book about it, looking at, how do we ensure that we don't, just focus on certain children getting, high-quality, rigorous opportunities, that all children have greatness within them. We've got to work to pull it out. So Dr. Felder, we thank you for the work that you'll do for us in this district. We've changed the structure of how we work with principals, because this job is hard. I mean, it is hard, and if you have, high expectations with low support, then, people lie, cheat, and steal more often than not, especially when their jobs are on the line. And then this kind of environment that we've been in, I mean, that's what it's been. It's been, lots of expectations with not a lot of support. So we had to rethink how we're going about supporting principals, and we've changed the model to make sure that, principal supervisors, there's about one supervisor for about 11 schools, and their job is to be in schools really understanding what's happening within the buildings, what are the supports needed, and how do we coordinate supports better. And we needed somebody to help lead that endeavor, and we have Dr. Cito Narcisse with us. Dr. Narcisse he's actually coming back into the district. He actually student taught right down the street at Antioch High School as a French teacher, and he went off to University of Pittsburgh and got his doctorate there. He's been a director of school performance in Montgomery County Public Schools, where he oversaw 34 schools' performance, high school, middle school, and elementary. And he went to Prince George's County Public Schools, where he supervised, I think, 78 high schools, middle schools, and elementary schools, really focusing on how do we improve achievement and help principals focus on the work, because that's a challenge that we have, is the lack of focus. You don't get results when you don't focus on things. I mean, you can't do 20 things well. How do you narrow it down to 2 or 3 things that you want to be excellent at and really focus on? And Dr. Narcisse has that expertise to support our principals and our school leadership teams and us really focusing on getting better outcomes. So Dr. Narcisse, thank you for being here with us. long before any of us came, there was excellence abound within the Metro Nashville Public Schools. And, Chris Henson has served with distinction on 2 occasions as the interim superintendent within this district. And he's also been the chief financial officer in the district. And actually, before I came, everybody told me, if you need to know about finances in Tennessee, there are a few people that really get it. And Chris does. And not only does he get it, he's executed on it. And his excellence is, I saw it immediately. It didn't take long. From hello, he had me at hello. Right. And so what we did was we promoted him from just the chief financial officer to be the chief operating officer, overseeing all of operations within the district, because we need that same excellence that he has demonstrated for years in finances in the areas of just all areas of operations. So anything related to non-instructional related things, the busing, security, the finances still. So he's still doing his financial job. We just gave him, more work, but a couple extra dollars. And we appreciate it. We appreciate him for all he's doing. So Chris, thank you for continuing to lead with excellence with us. We are one of the most diverse school districts in the nation, and we're also one of the largest school districts. I think we're about the 40th or 42nd largest school district in the nation. And one of the things we have to do is really figure out how do we celebrate that diversity and stop talking about diversity as if it is a deficit, because that's what we get a lot of times. We hear, we're challenged because we have English language learners, or we're challenged because we're X% free and reduced meals, or but none of that really matters if you focus on what's important. None of that really matters if you have high expectations and you're highly skilled, and you acknowledge and you constantly think about, how do we go about making our diversity an advantage, not a disadvantage. But it takes leadership and someone thinking through that work. And we brought an expert in Dr. Maritza Gonzalez to help us think about that. She's going to be our new senior officer for diversity and equity. And in that role, she had a similar role in Prince George's County, where she was the director of diversity initiatives. And as we look at every aspect of operations, we need her thinking about how do we look at our work through an equity lens, and how do we, because being equitable means we're not being equal. When we look at this cluster in particular, this is one of the most diverse clusters that we have in the school district. we're almost balanced as we look at our racial diversity here. Being about 34% white, 29% African American, 14% Asian, and our Latino population is pretty large, almost 30% when we look in this region. And as we look at the needs within our district, how do we give the right supports to schools so students can get what they need in this district? I think we've ventured into that realm with our student-based budgeting processes, where we're trying to give schools money and autonomy to make those decisions, but we've got to make sure we give them enough to be able to do what they need to do. And Dr. Gonzalez can help us think through those issues, and also think about, just because people are in the same building, in the same classes, don't mean they learn from one another. Don't mean they know much about one another. We've got to be intentional about creating those conditions and opportunities so our diversity can be a strength and we can learn from one another. So Dr. Gonzalez, we thank you for all that you'll do to help us think through that work. Over the course of the past few years, we have gotten many more of our schools have been identified as priority schools. Those are schools that, just looking at the test scores, we are, not doing so well as in relationship to the state. They're in the top, they're in the bottom 5% or 10%. Doesn't mean that strong teaching is not happening in those buildings, because you can have schools that are designated priority, and there's great teaching. There's just great challenge that's there, and maybe those students just don't do well on a test score. But invariably, we need leadership to help figure out what do we do to make sure we're getting the best out of all the children that are within those classes. And we feel very good about having Mo Carrasco on our team leading that office of priority schools. Mr. Carrasco comes to us from Montgomery County, where he has been both a middle school and a high school principal. He turned around a middle school that had low scores and made it a solidly high-performing school. And then he went off to Richard Montgomery High School, which is nationally is always ranked as one of the top schools in the country in terms of performance and achievement. And he made that school better because the school had an international baccalaureate program. It's doing very well. But when you looked at the data, it was really rich, white, or Asian students that were in the program, and they were kind of holding the average of the school. And what he did was looked at the rest of the students that existed within that community and figured out a way to give them an invitation, an opportunity, and access to programs. And by giving them that invitation, opportunity, and access, not only were they in the programs, he made sure they did well in the programs. And by raising the expectations for the entire school, that school went from good to great. And after that, he got promoted to supervise and train principals, both middle school and high school principals within the district, and he ended as being the Maryland High School Principal of the Year. So, Mr. Carrasco, thank you for coming on to Nashville with us and jumping on this journey. And we've had an interesting conversation in Tennessee about charter schools. Should we have charter schools? Shouldn't we have charter schools? Just choice. It's just been a very narrow conversation. And our position is we want excellent schools in the district, period. We welcome any excellent school, whether it's a charter school, whether it's a public school. We just want parents to have high-quality options wherever they go. I mean, you shouldn't have to decide on quality. You should be about, I want to go to a school because this is the program that we have, and they have my child likes science and mathematics, and here's a school that has a high-quality science and math program, or a humanities program, things of that nature. And we have to look at the choice conversation much more broadly and much more thoughtfully as we move forward. But thinking about this, I know it's been a pretty dividing issue in our community, and Dennis Queen can help us really think through this conversation in a much broader fashion. He's also been a successful middle school and high school principal. He also was a community superintendent in the Charlotte-Mecklenburg School District, and Charlotte-Mecklenburg has done great work thinking about choice within the district. And he also was a community superintendent in Milwaukee Public Schools. And Milwaukee has dealt with issues of choice, all types of choice, vouchers and charter schools and parochial schools. They've been doing it longer than any place in the country in terms of looking at that. So he brings a wealth of knowledge and experience. And he's also been a police officer, so when people get crazy, he can shoot. So Mr. Queen, we thank you for being here. So we feel real strong about our team, and so these are some of the senior leaders that are joining us. But we had a deep bench of high-quality leaders currently existing within the school district. So together we feel very strong that we have the expertise to move our district forward. But again, I started with the fact that we recognize that leadership is about context. Before we decide on which way to go, we really need to hear from you. We have a transition team right now that's looking at, we have national experts and local experts and state experts on those teams, looking at areas of student achievement, looking at what we do with choice, what we're doing with talent development, and what we're doing to better communicate. But coupled with that information, we want to hear from you about what do you think is working in this district that we need to continue doing, and what are the things that are driving you nuts? The things that we must fix if we're really going to be serious about having a conversation about moving from good to great. So we've come tonight to hear from you and try to understand your perspective. We have people capturing the information that you're sharing with us tonight. We might not have answers, but what we're going to do is take all the feedback and we'll bring that to the transition team work, and as we go into next semester, we're going to have a strategic plan that we hope when we put out, you'll be able to hear it, see it, and say, they heard us. They heard us and they're doing something about it. So,
if for any reason you prefer not to speak into the mic, cards are being passed out, and you can raise those cards, and the staff will pick those up and read those questions. Otherwise, if your question is not asked tonight or answered tonight, you may take a gallery walk again, and Post-it notes will be available for you to make your questions available to the staff. Thank you.
So without further ado, we have staff members that are present, and if you have a question, just raise your hand and they'll approach you and we'll get started.
You can stand with me.
Welcome, Dr. Joseph. My name is T.C. Weber, and I've got one quick question for you.
Yes.
I'm a little concerned in your talk about charter schools and exploring the third way and quality schools. Obviously, that's something that we've tried over the last couple of years. Unfortunately, we're in one school in Crosby and another middle school that is feeling the effects of the marketing of some of the charter schools, particularly Valor, which is a exceptional school based on that criteria, but it's affecting this school, and in the long run, it's affecting Overton. How are we going to protect our middle schools and make sure that they're as quality as they are now while moving forward and making sure that we're just worried about quality schools?
Yeah, well, I think that, to me that answer is easy. I mean, we've got to make sure that all schools are able to effectively serve the children that are there. I don't get into, is one school stealing kids or things of that nature. It's just, so the students we have, how do we make sure that we meet their needs? And how do we make sure that the schools that we have that are not charter schools have the resources that they need, have the professional development that they need? How do we make sure we are communicating to parents and showing the excellence that exists within the schools? And we're really focusing on quality. I keep telling myself, I got to be like the Gordon Ramsay of the school district, right? Like you just gotta demand quality and really get in and see what's happening. Because I think if people see, and a lot of times people leave and choose other options because of perception. And I think we've got to broaden the whole conversation of, so what makes a good school? Like we've got to have that conversation. Test scores alone don't make a school great. I mean, I've been in some schools in my lifetime that were considered like, very high-performing, high-esteemed schools. But being in it, it was bits. It was the bits. The culture of it was just awful. It was a competition. And I've been in schools that, I went to my undergraduate school. I mean, it's not, if you look at the rank order of it, it's not, a tier 1 type of school. But it was the best school I ever attended. I went to Lincoln University undergrad, and then from there, I went to Johns Hopkins and the George Washington University, and I'd put my experiences at Lincoln up against anyone because they really focused on culture. They paid attention to, who I was as an individual. They brought the best out of me and got me ready. And I think we've got to make sure all of our schools can do that same thing. But we can't get into the notion of stealing. Nobody's stealing kids. Parents are making the choice. We've got to answer the question, how do we make our regular schools the best choice or a viable choice? And that's enough about that.
Oh, sorry. Hi, welcome to Tennessee. We're real excited that you're here. My name's Kate Pantelides, and I wanted to ask, given the difficulty with standardized testing in the state for the last couple of years, and the extensive evidence that overemphasis on standardized testing is not helpful in terms of student success and teacher success, is there some thinking going forward of ways to diversify methods of evaluation and reduce this over-reliance on standardized testing?
Yes. So one of the things we. There we go. Yeah. One of the things we will look at this year is speaking with teachers about what tests do they think are meaningful, and what tests do we give that we have the option not to give that we could stop giving. I mean, we've got to really be thoughtful because we don't want kids spending X amount of days. I mean, we don't have a lot of days to instruct kids. I mean, we got 180 days, and when you factor in all the stuff that happens, it's much less than that. But we will be speaking with teachers, looking at, so what are all the tests that we're giving? Which ones do we have the option not to give? And which ones are most meaningful to them? But again, I think we have to look at, I mean, I'm reading this book right now, and it's the book of the month. Right now, we're doing a book of the month. The first one was Leadership and Self-Deception by the Arbinger Institute. The second book that we're putting up is called Grit by Angela Duckworth. And it's really looking at just this whole notion of effort-based intelligence and how do we measure, like I want us to start thinking about how do we measure kids' effort? And how do we focus on kids' motivations and understanding helping kids understand who they are, what they're strong at, and how do they exploit their strengths. Because we don't do that. We tell kids nowadays, we test you in math, we test you in reading, and we say, you can't be successful because, you don't do math or you don't do reading. And then we've got to broaden our understanding of intelligences. And so it requires a different type of testing. I was in a district before that measured kids' hope. Because there was this notion, Gallup has a survey that does that. Because if a kid doesn't see himself or herself as being hopeful, the likelihood of them being strong academically is limiting. So one of the things we'll have to talk about collectively as a school district is, are we measuring the right things? And if not, how do we reframe that? But that's a conversation. I mean, I've been looking at what the state has been talking about with EESA and so forth, because we have much more flexibility than we've ever had before, and we have an opportunity to really redefine the conversation about what makes a good school. And so we've got to get in there and be willing to think differently, but thinking more holistically is going to be important.
Hello, Dr. Joseph. I wanted to express a concern about fifth graders going to middle school. And I think that's part of why people are choosing different options, to have a smaller environment. Our kids have the option of walking to school, which is great. But for those fifth graders who are on the buses with eighth graders and every form of electronic device, they are learning more than they need to know right now. And so I would just really consider fifth grade being a part of elementary school. I know we have a big push about pre-K, but considering pre-K for pre-K centers, since they can't ride the bus, they can't stay the full day, just considering fifth grade back in elementary school.
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My question is in regards to reading. I think you touched on some of the things that I think we suffer in as a district is reading and reading scores, and would like to know what is your strategy to make our students better readers. I would like to personally see reading as its own course within our curriculum instead of it being a part of language, to separate it out so that they can concentrate more on how to help students to be better readers and strategies as far as taking tests and different things. And I felt like if we had a class that concentrated on that we could focus on that to help make our children better at testing and other things down the road.
I'm very concerned about our reading performance, as a district. I think we have like 39% of our third graders reading on level and about 41% of our eighth graders. So it's something I just told principals on Friday that, look, if we have to focus on one thing, it needs to be literacy. And when our scores look the way they look, we really shouldn't be doing anything else. Like that should be the main thrust of what we're focused on, because that's teaching kids to read is a civil right that we need to make sure that they have. So as we think about what we need to do, first we have to assess early where they are. And when they are not reading, we have to understand the why, because we've got to be real thoughtful about making sure schools have the comprehensive array of reading supports that are needed to help different students, because it's not reading is such a complex phenomenon. It's not a one-size-fits-all quick fix solution, and that's why it's such a challenge nationally. So step one, we've got to make sure we have the right tools to assess where kids are. Step two, we have to make sure, as we think about our how we utilize time in schools, we've got to make sure that we have time set aside for when kids aren't getting it. There's a time for them to be retaught and taught skills that are keeping them from reading. Again, it's a multitude of reasons why kids don't read, but they have to have the time, they got to have the resource. We got to make sure our teachers know something about the reading process, and how do we strengthen teachers' understanding of why children don't read within buildings. And I think a class can help, but we've got to make sure in math, science, English, social studies, foreign language, physical education, all areas, kids are reading. And we've got to encourage kids to read. I mean, you don't get better at reading unless you're engaged in reading at the appropriate levels. So, we've got to make sure kids have, we have wonderful libraries within this city. Are kids accessing those libraries? Do they know how to select appropriate reading materials? How do we make sure we encourage parents to make sure their kids are reading for an hour a day and are able to talk about what they're reading in a very complex way? So it's a very complex phenomenon, but those are the things we have to come together. We will have a comprehensive reading plan. That was one of the first things we talked about when we came into this district, is do we have a comprehensive reading plan? And if we don't, how do we put one together that is multifaceted and really pushes and expects much?
I have a question from the card. What will you do to increase school staff responsiveness to parent concerns? Yeah.
So we are talking a lot about the fact that we launched a new logo today and a new website. If you haven't had a chance to go to our website, you'll see that it's new, and all of our schools' websites are new. And our logo says that we will exceed great expectations. And one of the basic expectations we have is, when a parent emails you or calls you, you respond within a 24, 48-hour period. And then we have to work to, follow up on doing that. But we're talking a lot to principals about, look, it takes about 3 years to change student achievement trajectories, right? Because year one, you develop a plan. Year two, you implement that plan. Year three, you should get results of that plan if your plan was good to start with. But changing expectations can start like today. Improving customer service can change when you come into school on Wednesday. And that has been a message that we're clearly communicating and we're pushing on to ask. So what does it look like when a school exceeds expectations? And starting with customer service. And how do we lock down on that and push? So it will be something that's communicated from the top and hopefully enforced from our principals and everyone beyond.
Here is a question from the comment card. What plans do you have to utilize retired educators, business leaders, etc., to help our children transition into the world of work and academia?
Yeah, so I think right now, step one for us, so the short answer is I don't have a plan yet. And the reason I don't have a plan is because we haven't developed our strategic plan yet. I think step one is we have to lay out our strategic plan and what our goals are and what it is we want to accomplish. Once we do that, then we can invite people to help us support executing on that endeavor. But we do know that our retirees are a great asset that can support us. They're committed, they're passionate, and our business community has spoken extensively with me, communicating their commitment and support to helping us execute. One of the things I'd like us to do over time is to dramatically increase the number of internship opportunities that we have within our district. Because we've got to help children. I think the best training is on-the-job training. And getting our students in the business world, seeing what those expectations are, not only, the academic expectations, but the social expectations of being successful in the workforce. Most people, keep jobs because of their soft skills, and most people lose jobs because, I signed a termination letter today for a staff member who, wants to bite. That didn't work in any, that didn't work in any profession, and nobody's going to tolerate, that type of behavior. And we've got to make sure people understand that. And so having our kids learn that early will result in me not having to sign those letters anymore.
Good evening, Dr. Joseph. My name is Mary Holden. I'm a parent and former teacher. A quick comment about grit. I hope in your reading of that book you recognize Angela Duckworth, who wrote that, has come out very strongly against the testing of grit. I hope resources won't be wasted on that. It's important to understand grit and what motivates students, but to test that would be a ridiculous waste of resources in our already tight budget. Secondly, test scores are, as the research shows, a predictor of socioeconomic levels and pretty much not anything else except a snapshot of what students chose to do on the test that day. You've been here in Tennessee a little bit, and I think you may have heard about our testing fiasco, and I'm speaking specifically about the state testing. I'm hoping that you will soon be discussing a way to support parents who wish to opt out or refuse a test for their students, because these tests are really, really ridiculous. And I'm informed, I'm educated, I taught for 15 years. I know what standardized tests are meant to do, and they're not meant to judge teachers or schools or tell how great a school is, like you said. So I hope that the district will seriously support parents who wish to refuse those tests for their kids.
Well, let me say this. I wouldn't advise a parent to opt out of a test. That's Sean's personal perspective, and here's why. I think tests are a part of life. It's a reality. You won't, you can't become a teacher unless you pass a test. You can't become a doctor unless you pass a test. I would not want a parent to not know how their child performs in comparison to, other students, the nation. Parents should want that type of information. I do agree with you that too much testing is not healthy, but to not know where your child is on their reading performance, math performance, or science performance, I think is not beneficial. But parents do have that option to, parents have options and there are consequences, but I wouldn't recommend that. So I can tell you now that that's something that I would wholeheartedly, endorse, because I don't believe that it's the right thing to do.
I'm sorry. I'm Jeanette Veal. I am a retired ESL teacher in Metro for like 25 years.
Great.
And I wanted to actually compliment also the ESL department, the job the teachers are doing, having the translators here. They're working so hard. My question is there a structure in place to ensure that any school who receives any public education money has everything in place to meet OCR guidelines and requirements to provide the legal services required by the federal government to educate, especially our ESL children? Do we have a way to make sure that happens?
Yeah, that's our goal, and that's a big part of the work that Dr. Gonzalez is going to be working on. I don't know where we've been. So that's something that we're studying. It's a part of what the Student Achievement Committee is specifically looking on. And we have someone who's an English language learner expert on there from Fordham University, specifically because we know that we have a growing English language learner population in the district. And so we have to look at the supports that are provided. And if students need the services, we have an obligation to give them to them. So we'll work towards that to make sure that that happens. And if it's not happening, we need to know so we can reprioritize to make sure it does.
Hi. One of the challenges that I see our middle schools struggling with in this district, particularly our neighborhood middle schools, we have the Cambridge program in this district. Yeah. And as our middle schools try to implement these programs, I see decisions kind of being made between differentiated learning and what I understand being kind of tracking, is putting kids in particular, groups and advanced kind of courses. And I know we do that in our high schools, and there's some question about when we should start that in middle schools. And I see, fifth graders choosing a charter school or a magnet school, and in some ways that's tracking because they're going on to differentiated learning. But in our neighborhood schools, how do we fight that challenge of being able to offer something for those high academic kids?
Hey, what I like about the middle years program, the IB program for middle school and Cambridge, is that there, at least I know with the IB program, the middle years program, it's, when you implement a middle years program, it's for all kids within a building, and you're raising expectations for all. I would hope we're doing the same thing with the Cambridge program. I think we don't want to get into the sorting mechanism. But having said that, we have very highly gifted learners that need peers. I was a middle school magnet principal. So I get the notion that highly able children should have peers within their classrooms that they can be pushed and work with. So looking at our groupings in schools is essential. And I do think we have to make sure, though, that we have rigorous opportunities for all, and we scaffold when appropriate to make sure students who might not get it as quickly still get the expectations and get access to the rigorous content. And right now, one of the things that the Student Achievement Committee is looking at is our curriculum, and do we have different curriculums for different kids or high curriculums for all? And if we don't, we'll move towards a curriculum that ensures that there are rigorous opportunities for all. Differentiation is hard. It's easy to say, very hard to do. I think teachers struggle with it. I'm open to giving principals the autonomy to make those decisions based upon the needs of their staffs. If you have a highly trained, skilled staff, then you can have heterogeneous groups work. If you have a staff that struggles, a brand new staff, and people are trying to figure it out, you might have heterogeneous groups in name, but be teaching to the middle or the lower end. So I think you have to look at what's happening in schools and really target in on what's needed. But ideally, the research shows, kids benefit from heterogeneous groupings, but there are instances where you want to have flexible groups to be able to bring kids of like peers together for certain parts of the day.
Thank you so much for having this discussion. This is my 20th year working at Granbury Elementary, and never had a supervisor do this. So hats off to you for opening the dialogue with, I'm a parent of a sixth grader here as well as a staff member. So I got a couple of things here. One thing I think, speaking for a lot of teachers, is there's just so many things that are changing and throwing at us, like different kind of tests, things change, names of the testing changes, different initiatives to try and do this or fix this problem. Infinite campus, your favorite word, I'm sure.
Yeah,
and so, so unfortunately what happens is that there's just no time for training, and I feel like most of our colleagues feel like our heads are spinning because things are just thrown at us so fast. So, the wish, I think, for some of my colleagues for you to know is that, can we slow down some of these things that are thrown at us and, just try and give time for things to work. So, and the other thing is, we have free reduced lunch, or actually free lunch for all our kids. So why do staff members have to pay for their lunch? If we're getting our food for free.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, so the second part of your question, I think it has more to do with federal dollars, and we can't control that. the first part of your question, you know, I asked principals on Friday to tell me what's the thing that's frustrated them most, and I was at my desk today reading them all of those comments, principals, assistant principals, and central office folks, and the notion of we're doing too much came up. You know, I would say out of 50 of those cards I read, that you know, it said we're just, can we slow down? Can we focus on something? So I hear it loud and clear. And one of the things Dr. Felder, Dr. Narcisse, and Mr. Henson are looking at are what are the things we can take off people's plates? What are the things that we started, but we really haven't resourced, so we shouldn't be doing it in the get-go? And what are the things that are most valuable? And you know, Mr. Carrasco has already started some teacher focus groups going around in the priority schools, and you know, we're going to set up some opportunities for teachers to, you know, speak with me in some, you know, virtual sessions and some other sessions during the course of this semester to really hear from teachers specifically about what's working and not working, so we can, and what can be taken off the plate, what's optional that, you know, we're telling you to do, but really you're doing it because you're being told to do it, but really you could care less about doing it, so we can stop doing it and just give you more time.
Hi, my name's Jennifer. I have 3 small children, and in elementary school, 3rd grader, a kindergartner starting on Wednesday, and a 3-year-old. And I'm concerned about the lack of recess opportunities for the children these days. Most days they don't get it. They spend 5 minutes getting there, they play for 5 minutes, then it takes 5 minutes to get back. What do you say about that?
Yeah, physical activity is very important, you know, and I think it's come up in other sessions as well, and it's something we'll look into. We'll look into that for sure. But it's, you know, we've got to educate well-rounded children, and their health is extremely important. And I'm a big believer in giving kids opportunities to have physical activity.
Hi, I'm Chris Moth. I'm actually chair of the Hillsborough Cluster Parent Advisory Council, crashing the party, I'm afraid. You spoke to the value of heterogeneity in classrooms, and I really appreciate that. And I want to go back to a question. You were speaking about valor and how we need to have quality in all our schools. Can you kind of make that a little bit realer? In other words, at Valor, for example, we have 2 teachers in many classrooms and a really focused kind of board of executives. At Meg's Magnet is another example. We have a screen school with a very different student population. As an executive, how do you see us really and honestly competing in our zone schools with those kinds of schools? Specifically.
So specifically, I think we can look at what are the programs that are offered in our schools, and do we have programs that the community sees as valuable, you know, from a higher level to look at that. I think we can look at, you know, for the students that are within the schools, how are we thoughtful about the experience that families have when they come into school? You know, from hello, how are you greeted? How are your needs met? What's the voice that you have as a parent if something's not working? You know, what's the structure? How easy is it for you to actually impact governance and policy within your building? And I think we can look at, so how are we specifically supporting quality teaching and feedback within our buildings? I mean, I believe the quality of instruction in a school is dependent upon the quality of feedback that's given. So what are the feedback loops? How do we specifically put on display the quality of what's happening in the building to the community? So, you know, for example, we heard this wonderful orchestra today. So anybody who's in this cluster who questions music, you know, can our kids play great music? You know, that was answered tonight because you had an opportunity to hear this wonderful orchestra playing. How do we? But when we look at, so what's happening with writing? You know, how do we ensure that the community knows what our standards are for writing and the levels of quality writing that exists within this building? So I think we can do more in terms of the communication and putting out what is good, and also having parents see the challenge that many schools have across the country, particularly urban areas, is we've got families that check out. And when they check they take their resource, the cultural resource that comes with what they could provide. All right? So my kids' school, I was a English teacher, and I have the means to pay for 10 or 20 kids to, go on a field trip that the other kids are going on. How do we, get those parents involved in the schools to be able to help improve it? But it's and I think we've got to be honest. When we're not doing something well, we can't, lie to folks and say it's good when we're saying no, we don't think it is. I mean, we've got to be honest and say, here's where we can be helping. Here's where you can add resource. I think we've got to work with our families that are in our schools to maximize what they could offer to the schools, because I think sometimes, we receive not because we ask not. And there are opportunities where, parents who, we're in a region here where we've got a lot of families that work in the healthcare industry, work at the universities and things of that nature, and we could create opportunities through leveraging the strengths that are within the schoolhouse. So I think if we are in our local schools thoughtful about how we leverage the resources that are here, the parent resource that is here, I think if we're thoughtful about how we specifically communicate what the excellence is, or if it's not there, work to figure out how do we strengthen it in a very public way. I think if we give parents and the business community more opportunity and access to the governance structures within our schools so that there's actual ownership, more ownership, then I think we can compete.
Okay, this is our 5-minute warning, so we have 5 minutes left. I'm sorry we can't get to every question, but please make sure you utilize the question and comment cards. If you haven't written down your question or comment, we will come collect those. This next question is a question from that card. How will you increase diversity in school staff, diversity of thought, background, and culture?
We've got a lot of work to do there. I just looked at, we had a meeting today where, I think, 80-some-odd% of our new hires are white. I want to say 75% of our new hires are female. We have like 1.2% of our staff is Latino when our population is much more diverse. I think we've got to be much more aggressive and out of the box in terms of thinking about where we go to hire. We have lots of, I had a wonderful meeting, I want to say in early January with, there was a Muslim organization. We were out in the park at the one of these state parks, and there were hundreds of Muslim families there, and we have lots of mosques and things in the area. Have we gone to them to specifically ask about encourage them to become teachers? Because we have a large population of Muslim students, for example. We got to go to those places where we know that there's diversity. There are lots of fraternities and sororities around the country, African American fraternities and sororities that have thousands of college-educated folks. Do we reach out to them and encourage them to apply to become teachers? Advertise and those levels. I know when we were in Prince George's County, for example, I know Dr. Gonzalez was working to establish a Latino Teachers Association within Prince George's County and working on the national level there. Do we have a presence at those national organizations recruiting, letting people know that Nashville is a place that is diverse and we want you, if you're qualified to do so. So I think we can be more strategic about where we're looking for folks because they're there. We've just got to look harder and make a compelling reason for why Nashville.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Chelsea Agby, and I have a daughter in this cluster, and I'm also a middle school counselor, and I'm hearing a lot of conversation about the 5th grade transition. And as a school counselor, I don't know if you had the time to look into how our time is utilized. We spend a lot of time doing other jobs that don't have anything to do with school counseling, to be frank and to be honest. So I'm just interested in knowing if your team has thought about possibly kind of restructuring how we're utilized in this district.
And they have. They have, and I think this year there'll be new direction. I think when I was at the principals meeting, they were saying that 80% of a counselor's time should be spent on, the counseling instructional components. And so they have to negotiate with principals. Well, counselors have been doing X, Y, and Z. And so if counselors are no longer testing coordinators and no longer the acting assistant principal, and those other duties that they're not going to do that anymore. We're going to monitor that. So there are times to do the groups and time to actually see kids and talk about their needs and help them chart their academic and social goals and so forth. But that 80-20 has been clearly communicated, and now we've just got to implement it and execute it and work with principals on negotiating what else can they do, because you can no longer be the testing coordinator, which eats up all your time from January to May.
All right, this is going to be our last question.
Good evening, Dr. Joseph. Hi, I'm Ray Finney, one of the instructional coaches at Glengarry Elementary, and I love the idea of your leadership book study. So my question is, what is your vision for learning for the teachers so that we can continue teaching and learning within schools professionally? But it's twofold. So I wanted to know about us building up that culture and community that you spoke of earlier, but also we have a lot of PDs, learn this, learn that, and they're great. But what about learning about how to respond to students when they don't learn, or learning how to respond to students when they do, and kind of that PLC movement? So how can we, as teachers or coaches or leaders, emphasize the duality between culture and community, and even learning as better practitioners, but in the schoolhouse as teacher professionals?
It's something we have to think deeply about. And to think with us, I just got us in a cohort with the Learning Forward organization, which is the National Staff Development Council. So they have about 19 or 20 of the largest school districts in the country coming together to just look at the structure and organization of our professional development within the district and our continuum. I am still exploring, so how strong is our professional development for teachers across the district? And what, are we resourcing it enough? Who's in charge of it in the district? How do we, what are we prioritizing? Actually we have a meeting, I think, coming up in a week with them to help us really start thinking about that collectively, because we recognize that it's important. If we've got to, one, make sure we're putting the right investments in professional development, and two, creating the right structures at schools, so it's happening at the school level, it's happening at the district level, and where there's a synergy that we're moving forward, because right now I think that there are there are spots of excellence, but it's not scaled in any way, shape, or form, and we're thinking about that. But it's going to take work, and we're going to need teachers' voices in that. One of the things we're committed to not doing is thinking we know what you need. We've got to listen to you, and then give you what you say you need.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph.
Thank you.
Once again, we want to thank you for coming and being part of this Listen and Learn tonight. We recognize the administrators and we recognize staff members, so would all of the teachers who are teachers and retired teachers please stand and be acknowledged? Great. Thank you for your service. Once again, don't forget, if your question was not able to be heard tonight, leave a card or go through the gallery walk. And good night.